Hello, everybody. It's me, Lemoni, again, and I'm here with my friend Urs, and we're back for another week of the New World Report. We're going to talk some cool January patch stuff, get into a lot of stuff that's coming up in New World. And as always, what I'm going to ask that you do is you keep doing that weird YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff, but also head over to Urs's channel. It'll be linked below, and do the exact same thing so you can get both episodes of the New World Report, get all the content that we have to talk about. So, Urs, are you ready? Are you ready for today?
Let's do this New World Report. We got big stuff happening, man.
Big stuff, big stuff. So, as many of you may know, and maybe you've seen it, January patch. It is coming tomorrow. Well, today, right? And big things, big things. Mutators, Orbs changes, player changes, PvP. We'll talk about all that. But the big thing I want to start off with is the January patch. One, we have Mutator expeditions. I'm a huge PvE player, and
Yep.
we've talked about this a lot, and I'm super stoked for the Mutator change, going 1 to 10, getting all this cool new gear, but also I think Mutators in general are just going to be huge for longevity and retaining the player base. We all know there's a lower player base, but I think having this kind of competitive PvE system and having something that we can continually grind, even though we saw that expedition kind of orb issue that I'll talk about in a second. But having this kind of competitive PvE, I think, is incredible for the lifespan of a game. How are you feeling about Mutators? What are your thoughts, feelings?
Mutators are quite interesting for me. As you know, like I'm more of the PvP player in the New World Report, and I have sort of been putting off, and I sort of admitted to you prior to the show that I hadn't done my first Laz run or Genesis run yet. And that's simply by choice. It's not that I haven't been equipped for it or ready to do it. I've just been solely focused on PvP. I spent my first part of the game focusing on wars, doing a lot of OPR, a lot of guild building, camaraderie, things like that. I actually really don't have a crew to run these with. I tune in Lemoni's stream and I see him with his crew, and they are just running through Genesis like no problem. So I'm going to be shifting my playstyle quite a bit here, and I'm going to be figuring out the PvE aspect because this is the big update, and I'm going to be diving headfirst in. So if you guys want to see me doing some PvE stuff, check out the live stream. So I'm excited.
It's going to be exciting. It's difficult. It's challenging. I mean, I've done a bunch on the PTR, just getting some experience, and it's going to be cool. I think it's going to add a breath of fresh air to what we've experienced in expeditions and give us a lot of things we've never seen before. Because right now we're just speed running expeditions. I had a video that I just put out on speed clearing, right? And I don't even heal anymore. I just do damage, and it's a little ridiculous. But what I think is with Mutators, we have one major issue, and this is where I really wanted to talk about things, is tuning orbs. So last week when we were talking about this, right now it's a little daunting for us to craft Laz and Gen orbs, right? You can craft 1 Laz, 3 Gen a week, costs all these materials. I will say the first thing is I think they're making a step in the right direction in terms of like character progression, right? A lot of people like yours haven't actually stepped foot into Laz or Gen yet, and they've been level 60 for a while. It's just not super enticing. It's not inviting if you're not at that end game, like super end game point. But I think with what they're doing, and if you aren't familiar, if you read the patch note, they're going to make it so you can craft 2 Lazes, 2 Gens, and they are severely nerfing the amount of materials required.
And aren't they putting some of this in the faction store as well, right?
They are, and that's the other one. So we can craft 2 and 2, but then we can also buy 1 a week in the faction shop, and you can also buy 1 Mutator key. And I think that's super great. We'll talk about Mutator keys in a second, but with that, Corrupted Lodestone, the big one that's annoying to grind from portals, you can now buy from other players. Chisels, if you aren't getting faction tokens, you can buy from other players. All the runes, all the weird legendary mats you need to craft those, you can buy from other players. So it's going to really lower the cost of keys, not only because there's Mutators there, but just because the orbs are cheaper. So meaning at 60, you can start actually running these, and maybe they're going to be a solid way of getting more expertise and getting that faster, because you're going to have to catch up to run those Mutators. Now, on the Mutator side of things, these orbs, I am afraid that they're going to be very, 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 very expensive, because everybody's going to want to run them. You know, people aren't going to want to lose their key. They're going to have solid players, and it's going to be crazy. You get 2 a week. You can buy them from the faction shop. You can craft 1. But my one concern is, me as a PvE player, I want to run these over and over and over and over and over again. I don't want to end up paying 10K a key, that kind of thing. I don't know how you're feeling about that. I'm a little concerned just about, tuning orbs in general. I don't love the system.
Now, do you think there's an opportunity? Because I know, like, obviously healers and tanks are pretty in demand. If you switch out to a class like the healer or a tank, do you think you have a better chance at, maybe getting it? I mean, like, I don't even know. Is that
so
a necessity?
it's tough. It's tough, right? Because here's the thing, right? You can get cheaper keys. People will typically be like, healer and tank, you pay this price, DPS, you pay this price, and that's fine. But what I am having an issue with is, let's say you have a committed group. There's a couple groups I want to run with, like my group of people. Then I also want to run with some other friends on Eden, some other people that want to get together, get some really solid groups going. I can craft 2 orbs. I want to run with both groups, but I don't want to be that guy who comes into a group and doesn't bring the orb for the other 5 people, because then they're burning their super expensive orb on me, right? And I'm not giving that one back, or vice versa. Or for me to go 1 to 10 in the first week, I'm going to need everybody's orbs in a group, and everybody's going to want to commit. And it's just it's hard, right? And I don't love the system. I think it's just kind of promoting this pay to enter.
Yeah, and it's almost exclusionary content again, right? This is the same sort of fundamental issue with war. And we'll talk about war a little bit later on my video. But if you can't just skirt yourself in and just say, I'm the streamer, let me in.
Yeah, right. And it's like essentially it's just going to flip from Laz and Gen, people not wanting to enter because they have to pay this cost, to mutators. And then it's even higher stakes, because if they lose that key, they're not going to get anything out of it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or they want to push it to the next level, or whatever. But otherwise, from the update, again, all these mutators, they're going to be super cool. Umbral shards, it's an interesting system. The gear score increase, I don't know if it was necessarily needed, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the dev interview. But
there's one point I want to bring up about this, and I have no problem talking about this right now. We talked about it before going live here. There was a point in the dev video where they talked about almost that they felt like it was a little bit too early. They didn't quite say that, but they said like, in hindsight, this was done 4 months ago, and maybe increasing the gear score wasn't the right thing. But that's 4 months ago. And I agree. I'm like nowhere near 590. I mean, you had to sweat the hell out of this game to get to 590 across the board. So I don't know, man.
It's I will say, I think it's too early. I could have kept, I think 625 is pretty high, but I could have sat there and kept trying to get better sets, and then eventually give us maybe in February, give us a gear score bump. I think that would have been the better option. Yeah. I will say too, you're going to need a lot of Umbral shards to actually get to 625, but it'll take a while once you get to that point. Again, not really enticing for the people who aren't all 590 yet. But in general, I think it's neat that we're going to actually get something from running these that can help us increase our gear scores. But the big thing I want to point out with that is any 590 gear score piece, like of a named item that you get, for instance, me, I want Will of the Ancients. I can now upgrade to legendary if I use my Umbral shards, because they're allowing us to upgrade things.
It's only named items though, right?
Yeah, named items will go to legendary, but you can upgrade anything that's 590.
590, okay.
Literally any piece. So that's a plus, right? So we're getting stuff like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have any other thoughts on January patch? I think the big things, it's just huge expedition, tuning orbs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, again, my thought always goes to the solo player here, and if that's the main way to get, Umbral shards is through expeditions and rolling with a group of 5, that's problematic for guys like me. I mean, I play at odd times throughout the day because I work. Yeah. So, I just hope they, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, I think, down later in the video, but I hope they just think of more ways to reward solo players and not have this just like, well, if you don't have 5 people that are really super involved, then you're kind of boned here.
100%. So let's get into this next topic then in terms of character progression. So there's a couple things I want to address here. One is the 1 to 60 journey. Okay. It's a grind, right? It is a grind full of killing things and opening boxes, right? But my thing is, how did you feel when you hit, you started at level 1 and now you're level 60, you've been 60 for a while. How much stronger do you actually feel? Like, how much has your gameplay actually changed in terms of being at 1 to 60?
I feel like I've gotten a lot stronger. I mean, sometimes I'll go through areas and I'll be like, I remember when I had issues here. And it's just like I'm nuking guys with like the Void Gauntlet. So I feel a little bit stronger, but not like...
You definitely feel stronger, but like core mechanically, like in terms of play style, has much changed at all? Like, in a lot of games, I hit level 1, I'm sitting there slapping them with like a stick. And then by the time I'm like 60, I'm shooting down like infernos and fireballs from the sky and doing crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't really change. Yeah, it doesn't really change at all.
It's one thing for me, I think just doing that 1 to 60 grind is like, it is a long journey, but it doesn't necessarily feel rewarding in the sense of like character progression, right? Yeah. And how strong you actually get. I'm still using three buttons. They changed slightly because I threw some perks in there. My gameplay hasn't changed. I'm still heavy attacking to get some increased healing to drop a heal down, and that same heal I've been using the entire time. Nothing really changes. And I guess I don't know. I don't know how to really address that. I mean, maybe they start making items in the game or perks on gear that really fundamentally change abilities and gameplay styles. I just think we need more diverse gameplay and rotations. You look at any other MMO out there, there's a lot more going on and creating skill gaps and understanding how to actually play. But right now it is, left click at this massive blob and then, drop your same 3 abilities you've been dropping since like level 10.
See, the thing, for me, like, the thing, Lemoni, is like you've been locked into healer since the beginning of the game.
Yes.
I've rotated out to like three or four different builds, and I sort of ended up just wanting to chase the meta a little bit and try and be as good as I could be with the Void Gauntlet, Ice Gauntlet. So I feel like I've explored it, and it wasn't as linear as your route was.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, I have almost every single weapon at 20, right? So I've played a lot of builds. I've done I do my wacky Wednesdays. I do I've tried it. It's just, it's not, and maybe it's just me being a healer, but I just feel like the 1 to 60 journey, it was, I grinded, but I don't feel like I'm level 60 all the time. Right. There's always that. But I guess that kind of leads me to my next point is once you do hit 60, a lot of the time still in games, you hit 60 and you're fresh 60, but you keep grinding past and you get even more powerful. I will say with New World, I think this is the first time I've hit a game where I don't really notice a huge difference from hitting 60 to now in terms of healing, in terms of doing damage. Because if you look at it, even being in complete 600 gear, the only thing it does is it gives you like 50 more stat points if you eat a tier 5 food that lets you go 300, 200 in something.
Yeah.
That's what you get, right? But like fundamentally, it's still, once you hit 60, it's pretty much the same. I don't notice a giant difference, because even if you look at like perk wise, like you're talking small percentages in terms of perks. Like if I have Sacred on a ring at 400 versus Sacred on a ring at 600, it's a less like it's like 1%.
I think where I noticed the difference was everybody like got to 60 way faster than me. I mean, I felt like I was like 2 to 3 weeks behind the main pack when they got to 60. And when I would go into OPR and war and like invasion and things like that, it was like I was doing nothing. So I went from doing nothing to when I hit 60 to doing a little bit more than nothing because everybody was they were just faster and better than me. So I don't know.
I will say too, like in PvP, I think even gear in PvP, it's not like crazy always how different it is. Like you can still kill people, right? Like it's not, and I think it's healthy to be that way, but I think there's still like when you get that super cool like 600 axe versus my 591, like I feel like I don't know, I just feel like there should be a little bit more oomph.
So there's one point I want to call out here is the trading post sort of screwed this up for a lot of people because people just went and bought the gear they wanted immediately.
Yes,
so like you became 60, you had this surplus of money from all the stuff you were doing. You just went and bought your in-game gear.
Yes, you hit one of my favorite points ever that I've discussed in a video, and this was not exactly well received, but I was talking about it when Expertise and Gypsum came out, and I was like, this is an insanely cool fundamental change, because the whole point of MMORPG is to grind your gear, in whatever way, right? If you want to do trade skills, you want to do all that, but it's not hit 60 and then spend all your gold to get your end game.
That's exactly what I did. It's exactly what I did, and I was like, oh, I feel like I can compete a little bit. Yeah,
and that's kind of what you had to do, but it was like, there wasn't really a gear grind. There wasn't really anything to get gear. And like, there's all kinds of different things with PvP where you should have been able to get like PvP gear that actually was, like higher level. But
agree.
Hopefully they do something like that. But it's right now, as is still until this patch tomorrow where they make it with gear score scaling, everybody's just been able to buy gear, right? And that's been the end game because there hasn't really been the greatest way to grind the gear. And so I just think character progression, terms of 1 to 60, maybe give us a little bit more for something, and then once you hit 60, maybe give us. I really don't know. It's just tough because I don't feel that much stronger. I just allot my points differently, and then I'm seeing healing numbers different. Right? If I get a 560 life staff like I'm using right now versus 600, I'm not going to see that much of a difference. I already know that, and it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. So it's a little less like enticing to be like, I want to chase this. I would really want to get this piece, but. We'll
see what 625 looks like when no one else has 625 and all the the sweat lords get it first.
It is. I've heard like some people talking like the amount of like power differences from 600 to 625 is like 5% or 2-3 somewhere in that range, right? So it's like whatever. But that's a whole other thing we can talk about later on eventually.
All right. Game variety?
Game variety. So this is another thing I really wanted to talk about. I'm going to talk about this in a PvE lens. Okay. So right now I was talking about the 1 to 60 journey. They're doing things. They didn't really do much as far as the patch notes that I can tell, other than one thing with leveling. But in terms of like questing experience, right? So much of my grind from 1 to 60 was kill these things, grab these chests, run back. Kill these things, grab these chests, and run back. I think one of the most engaging quests too that I can remember, where I planted some bombs on the ground in Eden Grove once, and I like caught a fish for a bear, and then maybe getting the stag anal glands. You know, the anal glands quest. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. But like as far as like questing experience goes, it's just not very. There isn't variety. That's most simply put. And don't get me wrong, I love the grind. I thought it was a ton of fun, but that's where we lose a lot of the player base, and we've lost them in that midpoint of like 23 to 45 that they changed in the patch. Yep. And I think this is something big. Is it took forever to level in that middle piece for a lot of people. That's where they're getting stuck, and they nerfed it by about 20%. Do you think that's a big enough change in the mid game for the questing experience to really, push some players, maybe get some players back, or help other people keep leveling?
I don't know, man. I just think the questing experience is sort of fundamentally just boring. Like the narrative is just lacking completely. Like, you go and you're like, okay, there's this corrupted thing happening. I couldn't even tell you, like, I'm like, well, Isabella's hot. Like, there's that. Like, I like Isabella, but I mean, I have no idea.
And this is something I have never been a lore person. I've been a WoW player and I skip through everything, but I can still tell you general lore and tell you that the quests were cool. Like I was flying around a dragon shooting fireballs and stuff, but I do not know anything about the lore in this game. I don't know anybody, any NPCs, anything. And I think just there's been a relatively bland questing experience. And I think that's something that as we go in the future, and maybe if we have future expansions or even overhauls of the leveling system, right. I'm really hoping they do that for new players because it makes it way more enticing. Because it's super fun in the beginning, and then once you hit that 23 to 45, you're like, all right, I've done this before. It's just a different mob who does a different skinned ability in a different skinned region. And it's not super great.
And so they added, as just a point of clarification, they did add quests in the last update. Stuff that we probably haven't done. So yes. If I were to pull up my map right now, you'd see so many markers on my map. And it makes me wonder, like, maybe they fleshed that out a little bit. Maybe we're being a little too critical here, but I don't know. I
did go back and do a couple of them. It was still kind of like,
Go over here, do this, do that.
Yeah, like it was like, go kill some of these, pick up some things. I was like, all right, it's whatever. I'll have to go back and do a lot of those. But I think just generally, I think that is one point of game variety improvement that I would like to see. But I think my real big thing in terms of game variety is really going to get hit with these mutators, but that's with expeditions and mechanics. Yeah. So expeditions as of right now have kind of been like, we're flying through them. They're different. Everything aesthetically is very pleasing. Like the last boss of Lazarus, fantastic. But when I fight the last boss of Lazarus, it feels like I am standing there just hitting a wall because he doesn't do anything. Right. And again, you haven't been in Laz, but the last boss, what you do is you make everybody go damage. You don't have a tank. You don't have a healer. And you all just pump. Like that's it. You stand in one spot and there's cool mechanics going on, but there's so many spots where you can stand where you don't get hit by anything. So it's literally just a stand there and left click until he's dead.
Well, maybe Mutators is just going to make that a lot harder to do. And that's going to be the new challenge of actually.
I'm hoping so. I think more mechanics in later expeditions is going to be the big thing. I think mechanics are better. And this goes back to maybe to character progression in terms of rotations, and maybe we'll eventually have more abilities, or maybe we'll have more things to hit and do different things, or comboing abilities, something, I just think giving us more variety in terms of the PvE expeditions, rotations, character progression, everything, those kind of all jumbled together. But I think right now we're at this, kind of blank slate of, we have a lot of room to improve, and we're going to see where we go. And I'm hoping in a year from now, it's a very, very different talk.
It's going to be a good place. There's a few things we're going to talk about at the start of my video here, more about game variety, some stuff that came out in the dev update video that was released this week, or last week. So we will jump onto that on my video.
And we can jump over to that right now. So that's what I have on my video. So like I was saying, everybody, head over to Urz's channel, go ring that bell, subscribe, do all the regular weird YouTube stuff that you do for me, and get the rest of the New World Report. We're going to cover some fun stuff. I hope all of you are well. follow all our socials, our Twitches, our everything. Is there anything else they need to follow? I can't remember. There's got to be something.
Come visit us on Twitch. We both stream New World.
Yeah, we do that. So all those things will be linked, but head on over to Urz's channel and we'll keep on going.
Thanks, guys.